Hey guys, what's happening? Thanks for tuning in, coming back and watching. I appreciate it. I hope your day is going really well. And I am experimenting around with a photo in Topaz Studio 2. And I was just kind of having fun. And that's one of the things that I like about Topaz Studio is, the model's different with Topaz Studio 2 versus the original Topaz Studio version 1. And that is you pay one price for Studio 2 and you get all the filters. And I think it's really cool. And the filters are great. And it causes me to want to experiment and do things that I might not otherwise do. And so I was kind of playing with a photo. Just thought I'd share some workflow ideas and show a couple of filters that I don't really ever talk about because I don't use them a lot, to be honest, but they're very cool and very interesting. So here I am in Topaz Studio 2, and I'm just going to say Studio. And I was in the Tate Modern in London, and there's this really cool staircase, and I was trying to get some shots of people walking up and down it, but either they stood in the wrong place or they just stood there and thinking that they were out of my photo and they were actually in my photo but in the wrong place. So I was just standing there waiting for them to move. Anyway, finally it all deserted, and then I just had my daughter go stand over there. So my daughter's kind of posing and acting like she's walking up the steps for me. But I was playing around here in studio and I came up with that. And, it's kind of grungy, it's kind of rough, it's kind of edgy, modern, but it had some kind of fun stuff that I did. So I'm going to reset these filters and then we'll go walk through it. Okay, so here's my base raw file, and that was just shot with my Sony camera. The first thing I did is use the basic adjustment, and as you can see here, just really literally some basic stuff. So I bumped up clarity quite a bit, and interior scenes like this where it's all concrete and it's kind of modern, I'm totally fine with cranking up the clarity and the grit. I think you have to be careful with clarity or any sliders like that, which would bring up detail or edge contrast, because it can start to really make your photo look a little grungy very quickly. So that would be true in Lightroom or Luminar or anything. But interior scenes like this, when I'm kind of going for a different and unique and kind of gritty look anyway, the hell with it, right? Go high. So I did that. Took the highlights down and blacks and whites and just played around a little bit basically, and got it to there, and it's kind of crisp and sharp. I think it looks good. She's really crisp, and you can pick up some of the details here, but I wanted to add precision contrast. It's just one of my favorite filters, and so I use it on every photo. And I don't really have a method that I use. I don't always say, well, take medium contrast up by 10 or anything like that. I do it all by feel, and so I just started moving these 4 sliders around and came up with something that I liked. I took down the midtones a little bit, and that was really about it. But then also I adjusted the opacity of this layer. So I was at 100 opacity, which is that, and I just took it down. I think it was at 64 or something. So I'll just put it there. But that's a nice thing about these filters. Each one of them is that you can adjust the opacity, and so it just gives you a little bit more control in terms of how much impact is that edit having on your photo, right? So the next one is one of the filters I hadn't really talked about, and that's edge exposure. And as the name implies, it allows you to change the exposure levels on the edges of the photo. So effectively, you can create a dark frame, which is what I did here. You could also create a lighter frame if you wanted, right? And they've got presets, which I didn't use, but each one of these, there's an arrow pointing. So adjust the left edge. This would be adjust the top, right? That's adjust the bottom because the arrow is pointing down, and that'll be adjust the right because the arrow's pointing to the right. So in each case, you just click on them. So I'm on left exposure here, and I just went from, I'll show you, I was at 0. So if you look at that left edge, there's no darkness there. And I went to 23, I think it was. So let me get to 23, and it just kind of darkened the edge, and then I went over here to top and did the same thing. And so, you've got all kinds of flexibility here. You can see how you can make it brighter. So kind of like a reverse vignette, if you will. But I wanted to kind of darken these edges. I think I was higher on the top. Yeah, something like that. And then, you can change the size of it, right? Which is the intensity. And then let me hit reset there. And then the transition zones as well, right? So it's basically just something that's probably going to be different on, not probably, I think it is going to be different on every photo. So just experiment. There's a nice thing. If you have one set and you like it, you can just hit apply to all. And if there's any color involved, right, you can kind of do that with the colors. So I chose not to. I just left it all the way it was and just went for it. But that got me from that, which, to me, one of the reasons I wanted to kind of frame this is because it's a big open scene, but there's only, to me, three pieces really that are interesting. One is her standing on the stairs. Two is this little sign that says Galleries, Terrace, Shop, and it's pointing upward. And three is like the curve of that stair, which she's kind of following that line. It's a staircase. She has to follow the line. But, visually, my eye kind of starts with her, and I kind of want to go up and to the right. And then you have that where it says Galleries and Terrace Shop and the arrow pointing. Again, a staircase with a sign. The sign's going to point up or down the stairs accordingly. But those are the things that I find interesting. And in fact, I would come in and remove these placards. I don't remember what they are, but they probably talk about donors or something. But anyway, I would remove those later. But nonetheless, that was why I did edge exposure, because it sort of concentrates you a little bit more on the center of the photo. And it's really her and the curve of the stairs and a little bit of that gallery sign that I like. Having said that, I also next use motion blur to increase a little bit of, to create a little bit of a motion blur in the photo. So this filter works. You can click on this little button here, and that'll give you that icon, and you can just go place it anywhere you want. So there you go. You can put it here, you can move it over there if you want it or whatever, but obviously I wanted it on her because I want her mostly in focus. And I just did the motion blur as kind of an artistic thing to see how it worked. But the opacity at 100, it blurred out my sign, and it was a little too blurry on the staircase, so I just pulled that back again. And I don't know what I was at, but I actually think I'm going to go a little bit lower here. So I'll get a little bit of motion blur, which is going to be more on the outer edges, because if you recall, I've got this centered around her, so she's going to be crisp. But I think it's sharp enough here that you can easily read that it says Galleries, and still I feel like your eye is kind of drawn in the direction I want you to go, which is, hey, this person is taking a journey up the stairs. Let's visually follow them. That's kind of how my eye operates there. But that's motion blur, and it's just kind of fun. And this is not a tutorial on motion blur. There's a bunch of presets. There's different types of blurs you can use. I just thought that zoom blur worked good, which she was in focus, and it kind of radiated outward from her. Next was quad tone, and you can see I changed the colors quite a bit there. Now it defaults to a number of colors, which I like a lot on certain photos, but on this one I didn't. So the blacks I just made totally black. The shadows actually got in kind of this purple realm, and really it's just because I was trying to get a little bit of a grayish silver, and a really light purple kind of has that look to it. You might could go a little bit more this way if you wanted to, but I was somewhere in that zone, and it just kind of worked for me. And then for highlights and whites both, I just put it in the center of the color wheel and was able to come up with that look. Oh, and if you saw that, I also adjusted the opacity. So at 100, it was a little bit too purple, and I could adjust that in there in the shadows where I kind of picked up the purple, but I also was able to just, take opacity down. And so, again, another wonderful thing about Studio is each of these is a different layer effectively. So each filter is its own layer. So within each, you have that opacity slider if you want to make adjustments to it. And I do that a lot, as you can tell. I'll do the adjustment at full strength, and then sometimes I'll say, well, it's a little too much even for me and for a photo like this, which is kind of an over-the-top edit. Clearly not, based in reality, but I just want to take it back a little bit and tone it down. So that's something that works well. Next up was curves. And as you can see here, by the way, this is not going to be a full tutorial on the curves filter either, because that would actually be a video unto itself. I've done curves tutorial videos in other products, and they operate the same, so you can find those if you like. But basically, it gives you a lot of control over light and shadow and contrast. And all I did is you can drop these different points on this line, and this line is impacting the overall luminance and shadow and light and that sort of thing in the photo. And I moved them around until I got it the way I wanted it to look. So, you've also got blend modes, and you've got presets. You can see here, you can also impact colors. That's something I should point out. Each of these, you can see I haven't done anything with those colors. Red, green, and blue, your basic colors in an image. You can also impact those, whereas this one, here you go, if I highlight over it, adjust the RGB tonality curve, whereas these are going to be like the red tonality curve, so I'm affecting the red colors on the red, green, or blue. Here I'm affecting the tonality of the entire image. Again, not a full tutorial on that. If you think it would be helpful, I can come back and do one at some point, but I went from there to there, impacted tonality and contrast and that sort of thing. And then I just did a basic adjustment, and that was I still had a little bit too much. I almost kind of like it like that now that I look at it. But at the time that I was creating this photo, I felt like it was a little too much of that. Purple tint. So I came in here and all I did is I took the temperature up and I took the tint left to get away from kind of that lavender look, but actually might go back a little bit because I'm kind of liking it a little bit more now. So I think I'll do something more like that. But that's one of the great things about basic or any of these filters is I used basic down here, but each of these is a different layer. So you can just keep sticking filters on, and I don't even know if there's a limit. I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm at 7. So it's effectively 7 layers. And I've had 0 degradation in performance. The image is responding fine. It is a full-size RAW file shot with a full-frame camera. So, it's a fairly large image. But that was my original, and that's my end state, which is, hey, this is not based on reality. But that's kind of what I like about the image is I wanted to do something kind of different and edgy. And that scene called for because it's very industrial. If you weren't aware, the Tate Modern is like an old, I think it's like an old power station. So it's got this concrete everywhere and it's real kind of like rough like that. So anyway, it worked for me. But mostly I just wanted to walk through this workflow because I had some filters I hadn't really used or talked about in Topaz Studio before, like edge exposure, motion blur, and curves. Thought you might enjoy it or appreciate it. Maybe it gives you some ideas on things you can do. But once again, a drastic difference from the original straight out of camera RAW file to my current state. And that's how it went, folks. Quick, easy, fun, and it's really just down to experimentation. And if anything, that's really the message I think in this video is that Topaz Studio has so many tools, and it's got 32 or 33, 30-something filters that are included in that one price, and it just gives you a lot of flexibility to do things, and some of them I haven't even gotten into yet with you guys. And that's, some of these things down here like abstraction and impression and smudge, I haven't covered those very much. So I'll be back doing more videos. Let me know if there's certain things you'd like me to address, and I'll keep sharing some workflow ideas. Hope it helps. Hope it gives you some ideas for your own photos. And thanks for watching, my friends. That's all I got here. Like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you soon, friends. Have a great day. Take care and adios.